Hey everybody, welcome to My EdTech Live. Thank you so much for all of you that are joining us live right now. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, we're live on YouTube and Twitch. So just look for us, go to our website, myedtechlife or myedtech.life, and you can go ahead and check out our live show from there too as well. So thank you guys for joining us this Saturday morning. As usual, it's my favorite day, my favorite time, and as always, just bringing you some amazing guests. So today we have half of the punk rock classroom podcast. Mr. Mike Earnshaw is here today. Josh is out at Furnace Fest having some fun, taking pictures of shoes and eating some waffles, and so it's been great to watch him. So big shout out to Josh, who's having some fun this week. But I'm just really excited to be able to talk to now my new great friend Mike also as well, that we were able to connect couple of shows ago and talk about a new release that he has. He has a book coming out, or actually it already came out, called the EduCulture Cookbook. And today's conversation, guys, those of you that are watching, is going to be talking about classroom culture, school culture, and seeing things from that administrative standpoint. So as always, thankful for my great friend, Mike. Mike, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm awesome. I'm super excited to be back too. It is kind of weird seeing like Josh out on his own little vacation with, you said, numerous shoe and carpet picks, and then I saw the waffles, a fast food waffle place. But yeah, so no, I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you know, it was funny because I saw the intro and then I see that one shoe shot and I was like, oh man, Josh. I just thought about Josh right there about the shoes. But big shout out to my friend Josh. And Mike, I know we got on the chat a little early, you know, kind of 10 minutes, just kind of warming things up and everything. So I'm really excited about today's conversation, and most importantly too, just kind of an extension of what we talked about, you know, in the previous podcast when both of you were here talking a little bit about that school culture. So we'll get a little bit more into that as far as the skateboarding principle, you know, some of the things that you do to really pump up your campus as far as your staff and your students and even parents as they walk in. So I'm really excited about that. But just in case this is the first time that we have some new listeners and some new viewers, if you can just give us a little brief introduction and your context and education.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Earnshaw. I am a father, husband, currently elementary school principal. I started my teaching career in 2004. Where I taught middle school English language arts. And I did that for maybe around 10 years. And then I'd gone back to school for educational administration because my current administrators at the time kind of told me it's going to open more doors for you. Because I'm like, I have no desire to become a school administrator at all. They're like, no, trust us. Like, we see qualities in you, and anyway, even if you don't want to be a principal, it's going to open more doors. So it's funny. I got married in 2007, came back from a honeymoon. All right, I'm going back to school, and that first semester, it's like the cliche saying like you can reach more kids than just your 25, 30, and I fell in love with it. So next couple of years did that, and then my courses, and then I became a middle school assistant principal. Did that for 2 years, and in the district I'm currently in, a elementary principalship opened up. Threw my hat in there after 2 years, not knowing if I was really ready, but I wanted my district to see that I want a desire to move up, and I got the position. And this is now my 8th year at that campus. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That is awesome. But you know, like I love what you said, and just frankly, just being honest. I mean, just like I told myself, I never want to be a teacher, but here I am 16 years later.
Mm-hmm.
You never want to be an administrator, but here you are and just doing a fine job, you know, in what you're doing on your campus. And, you know, I think one thing that I want to, you know, highlight that you mentioned, and this was something that the conversation that I had with Josh Tovar last week, you know, you mentioned that some people saw that quality in you.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's something that's very important, and even more so now. And actually it's always been important, because oftentimes we personally ourselves may not see ourselves as maybe, or maybe we don't see these qualities in ourselves. We don't see that we have those leadership skills or any other skill. But tell us a little bit about who it was that kind of approached you the first time as far as noticing some of these skills.
Yeah. So when I taught, I guess you could say I kind of beat my own drum. Like I was a team player, obviously. You know, middle school we were set up in teams, and I've always been about relationships. So I knew, you know, everyone in the school. I had built relationships with everybody, staff wise, but I kind of would do things, you know, out of the box, like, you know, stuff that Dave Burgess put in Teach Like a Pirate. You know, I'm like, when that book came out, I'm kind of like, man, these are like the type of things I'm doing. Like, I'm not alone here. You know, when I was teaching, you know, argumentative writing, like we would set up my class as a courtroom, and everyone would have a role. We were debating between is the wolf or the three little pigs, you know, who's guilty here. So just doing these kind of out of the box activities. And, you know, I think sometimes some of my colleagues at the time when I taught kind of were very thrown off by that. And they're like, oh, he's just sitting there having fun with them and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know, I'm going to do my thing. Like, this is how I would want to learn as a kid. And my kids are learning. We had some of the best local assessment, you know, growth with my students. And of course, me being a male, and I was on a team of mostly male educators, they gave us some of the really tough boys, you know, and we were showing great growth. So, you know, as I moved on in my career, and yeah, I only taught at the one building, you know, I just kept doing my thing and became more confident in my approach. Just kind of knowing, like, building relationships with the kids first and their families, and bringing them these experiences through my lessons was the right way to go. And then, you know, I started getting on committees. I started doing like some presentations for our school, like things the administration would come and ask me. And again, I'm like, well, they're just asking me because now I've got 5, 6, 7 years in. Like, I didn't think it's because they saw anything in me. And then I was at a basketball game, and I was supervising. I was trying to make some money for the wedding, and my assistant principal and principal at the time both were kind of talking to me, and they're like, I brought up, I'm like, well, yeah, after the summer, I'm going to go back to school, and I might go for curriculum or just expand my ELA degree. And they're like, no, like you need to go for administration. Like, oh, I kind of laughed at them because I thought they were joking. I'm like, you're telling like this little, you know, punk rock teacher, you got to go to school to do what you're doing, lead in a building. I'm like, no, seriously, like, you have these leadership qualities that not everyone has, and you would be very effective as a school leader. And they're like, and then that's when I told you, they said, oh, it's going to open more doors and blah, blah, blah. And then, so as I was going through, it was interesting because, you know, I'm not saying this to like toot my own horn or anything, but like, as I was going through the program, and as I started asking those current administrators for letters of recommendation, you know, knowing I'm going to make the move into administration, my assistant principal at the time, she had pulled me in and she said, look, before I give you this letter that I wrote, I want you to know something. You know, everything in here is true. I'm like, okay. You know, I'm thinking it's a letter of recommendation, right? It's going to be like the generic format we fill things in. And she's like, and then she goes, do you remember when they were building a new team once? We had gone from 3 grade level teams to a 4th team, which was going to be it was like the looping team. So we had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on our team, and the kids were going to loop with us every year. She's like, do you remember when we were starting to put that team together and we surveyed the staff, like who would, if you were to work on like a team with if you could build your own team, who would you want as your ELA? Who would you want as your math? And she said, you were the number one pick of like everyone said they wanted to work with you. And I'm like, what? And she's like, and that's what we're talking about. Like you have this thing about you that people want to, learn by and be inspired by and, work with. So she's like, that's why we were telling you need to make this. So it's interesting. So I do the same. Like I have staff that I see leadership qualities in, and I'll kind of try to give them some tasks, hey, do you want to help lead this up with me? Or do you want to take the reins on this? And, it's about like empowering them to know, like, regardless of what our title is in education, like I have a paraprofessional that I just gave the full reins on a project, and other administrators might look at me like, oh, a paraprofessional leading that. Like, no, like, I don't care. He is the right person for this job. And actually many jobs, I give him, because he's going to shine there where I wouldn't do nearly half as good a job as he's going to do with it, So it's about seeing these things in others and help bring it out. Because for me, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be sitting here today. I'd probably still be sitting in a classroom, just doing my thing,
That's wonderful. I love that, because that story, it really resonates with me because it's kind of a similar way in the way it ended up in this position. And then, of course, like you said, it does open up more opportunities and so on. And the fact that I get to be here too and interviewing you and had the opportunity to interview some of my favorite edu leaders that are out there that I've looked up to, and just be able to get that one PD like that for personal PD, but I mean, everybody else gets to hear your story. I mean, that's something that's wonderful. And I want to give a big shout out to Josh Tovar, who's joining us this morning all the way from Garland ISD, probably in his home and probably busy doing some stuff, later on. This is his PD day. And Mel, also, thank you, Mel, for joining us all the way from Colombia. It's nice of you to drop by this morning. So I'm really excited about that. Josh, put a comment up here that was very interesting that I really liked, and it was this right here: people in our chair need to create future leaders.
Exactly.
And this is something that actually in one of my classes that I'm taking in my doctoral course, it talks about mentoring, and we're talking about right now just the effectiveness of having those leaders up in the administrative roles and positions. But I feel that that's something that is very, very important, where you have leaders that see the potential in those that they are surrounded by and help build them up and groom them to be the next leader, whether it's still within that district or maybe somewhere else. But I always, remember that comment, that quote, and I don't remember who quoted it, but it's like, train people well enough where they can leave, but treat them well enough where they stay.
Right.
And, I think that's something that's very important in our culture, but sometimes, your own personal interests kind of get in the way, because you're like, oh man, I don't want to, lose my job, or I don't want to get bumped out or things of that sort. So how do you find that balance? Or let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that, man, if I help too much build this person up, I could be, out or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I have felt like that, especially not with staff, like not with the teaching staff, but sometimes with I've had probably, I think, 3 or 4 different assistant principals throughout my 8 years here, and my goal is always to, yes, they're the assistant, but we're a team. We're running this together, and many people, I don't aspire to just stop at being an assistant principal. Many people, like, you're going to do this, get some more experience, and then move and take over your own building, your own campus. And sometimes, after having someone for so many years, you start to think like once, they're comfortable and they just know the role. And I guess you kind of get in your head like, okay, are they going to start to overshadow me? And years ago, I had our former superintendent kind of brought that up to me in an evaluation, because I had an assistant principal and she was great and she was very strong. And she's now at her own campus and she's been there for a few years doing an amazing job. But I think that would be the only time. I mean, for the teachers, and even for the assistant principals, like I would never hold somebody back, because of me being afraid you're going to put me out. I mean, I feel like I've done enough and I'm constantly evolving and learning and trying to move our building forward, that I don't worry about. I mean, I focus on what's in front of me right now. What's in front of me in this building? What do we need to do? And how can we do it? Not how can I do it? Like, how am I going to get it? So like, how are we? So if I need my assistant principal, like, I need you to step up and you're going to do all this. Like she's going to do it and she's going to do a great job. And I'll support her in that if she's the leadership part in that role. Yeah, but it's about, I mean, I heard at a conference a few years ago and I cannot remember who said it, what presenter said it, but basically a principal should want to work themselves out of a job. And that really struck me hard, because it's true. I should be able to not be at our campus and just know if I'm not there, this person's going to step up and handle this. You're going to step up and handle this. And I shouldn't need to be there to micromanage and tell you, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it's happened there's certain aspects that have happened like that. I have a teacher who has her administrative degree, and a few years back, we had lost an assistant principal mid-year, and she stepped up, gave up her plan time, gave up her lunch time, and she was coming to the front office saying, hey, let me help you with any student discipline issues that have come up. What do you need, boss? Like what? So she had stepped up knowing she's got a background, and it's about empowering people. I mean, if we're holding others back because we're afraid of how others will perceive us as maybe being ineffective, I mean, that's not going to help anyone. That's definitely not going to help our students. And that's why we're here. We're here for them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think one thing that you hit on, though, too, is that you as a principal, I mean, you're not stagnant. You're like you said, it's very important to be ever evolving. So you're continually growing too as well. And as you're helping build others, it's not like, oh, okay, well, I'm set, I'm done, I already have all this down. And I think that that's where some of the problem may be, when people keep doing the exact same thing and there's no change. Then that's, I think, where they get in their head like, oh, I'm going to get passed up here. Well, let it be.
You might be.
Yeah. And I said, let it be like a reflection piece. Like you always look at yourself and say, okay, what are some things that I can still keep improving on and better my practice and continually growing? And I think that's what drives me too. It's like, I just want to learn. There was a comment on Twitter from a great friend of mine who does IT also. And he's like, oh man, I'm almost done with my dissertation and, getting his doctorate and everything. And I told him, I was like, dude, I'm already thinking of what I'm going to sign up for in the next 2 years once I'm done, because I just can't find myself not doing something or continuing my education. So, but yeah, I think that's something that's great. Now, let me ask you, because I didn't get to ask Josh this question, but you and being in the principal seat, and before we get into the culture stuff, but I'm curious for yourself, what is it that you do personally to continue to sharpen your skills? I know that you're very busy. You're running a campus. You're a family man. You've got your wife and your kids. But what do you do to continue to sharpen your skills as an administrator?
Yeah, well, number one, hands down, and this was the game changer for me back in 2018, getting active on social media. Like I had gone to NAESP when it was in Chicago, not the summer we just had. Obviously, this was like, I think, 2018. And I had a Twitter account. I had gone to a conference before where it's like, all right, everyone, you're going to make a Twitter account, and everyone makes one, and then you never touch it, right? And so everyone there, I'm like, okay, everyone's talking about Twitter, everything. I'm like, let me figure it out. And once I started connecting with these educators and seeing like, oh man, like this administrator's running his building like this. Like, why can't I do that too? Like, why do I think I have to do the stereotypical admin role? And just being connected with all of them is number one. I know some people don't like Twitter, so maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Facebook, whatever it is. You got to get connected with people outside of your campus, your district. Number two, like going to as many conferences as I can, which, I know will take me out of the building, but I think it's important to always just learn new things going on, or just hearing something, maybe that's not even new, but hearing it from a different perspective, hearing it from a different voice. And then I try to read as much as I can. I'm not going to lie, this year's been hard because by the time I sit down in bed, usually when I would read before I go to bed, I'm just exhausted. But I read a lot of educational books, but I also try to read a lot of books about leadership that aren't from the education world, So I'm like, currently I'm trying to read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And so far, I mean, they take their Navy SEALs experience of leading them, and then tie it into, whether it be business or whatever field you're in, like you can take these key components and just trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can, so that's kind of how I kind of keep myself fresh. I mean, the number one though, you got to get connected with people. Maybe it's the town over even. Maybe you don't want to be on social media. Reach out to that district 15 miles down the road. Go out for breakfast or coffee once a month and just share some stories, bounce ideas off of each other, because that's what's going to help you grow when you see these other perspectives.
Yeah. And see, and that's a great thing that you do also as well, and other educators such as myself and everybody that's here. I know Josh was a big proponent on that. I mean, right now he put a comment up right here. It says, if you're not on social media, you still rent your movies at Blockbuster and buy your pants at Montgomery Ward's.
I haven't heard Montgomery Ward's in years.
Neither have I. That actually, Montgomery Ward's is where I bought my very first, it was a combo, like record player / tape deck.
Yeah.
And my first Discman, that's where I bought that. That was many moons ago, so I'm dating myself there. But here Mel says, power of connections, better together. I agree, Mel, 100%. And, your story also was very similar to my great friend, AJ Bianco, who also turned from teacher to administrator. And I call him the teacher strader because he still has that heart of the teacher, like where he misses the classroom, but now he knows a different role. He mentioned the same thing that you said, I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I thought I can give more. And he got connected to social media, started following wonderful education leaders. And his quote right there to that clip that I put, it says, I changed into now what I want to be. And now he says, I want to share that with my teachers now.
Yeah.
So that's something that's so important, because as you are taking this in, this is what you're giving out too as well. And so it kind of ties in together with your job and everything. So I'm really excited about that, and just to hear how you train yourself up and keep yourself current. So let's talk a little bit now. I know the book, I definitely want to get into that, transforming classroom and school culture, the Edu Cookbook. Really excited about that. Tell us a little bit about that and just the inspiration behind all of that. How did that start?
So, one, with my ELA background, I've always wanted to write a book. I always thought I would write a fiction style book. That's always what I thought I would do. And I started blogging a few years ago, but none of my blogs ever had a theme. I'd write about, one aspect of education, or not even education, just whatever was on my mind this day. And then the next day was something completely out in left field. So as I started sharing my blogs and some people were reading them, I was getting some feedback, and I was thinking there's no way I can write a book because I'm all over the place. And so it took me a while to figure out what I was going to do. And then I noticed I started putting some tweets out about activities I did with our staff at our faculty meetings. And I was getting comments from other administrators saying, hey, what do you mean you did this struggle island, like outside at a staff meeting? Like, what's that about? So I was like, well, hold on, I'm going to write a blog about it and I'll share it with you. So I started writing these blogs about some of the activities we did. And I noticed these were getting more readers than anything else I had put out there. And more people were saying like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Like, what other things are you doing as a building leader? And so one night I was writing a blog at my kitchen table, and, my daughter was kind of like, oh, are you writing a book? And I'm like, maybe I am. And then I kind of started thinking, I'm like, what if I put all of these things we do as a staff to improve our culture in one package? Like, I'm like, all right, that could work. So that's kind of how that came about. If it wasn't for her coming up and asking me, like, what are you doing? But then, of course, I didn't want to just basically have a book of like my blogs, so I'm thinking, what can kind of set it apart? What can, if I were to pick up a book, any book in education, like the problem I have found, I'm sure you have, and I'm sure everyone else has, you read something, you make your highlights, you put your Post-its in there, you write in the margins, and then you put it on your shelf, right? And then 6 months down the road, you're like, oh, I remember reading this in so-and-so's book. And you go to pull it out and you can't find it. You're like, I thought it was chapter 4. Then you kind of, you either find it or you kind of just give up and you put it back on the shelf. So I was talking to my wife one day, and when I was kind of starting to write the bulk of the book, like the chapters, these stories of what we've done. And my wife's like, what if you make it like a cookbook? Like, what do you mean? She's like, well, like a cookbook, they have like a description of the recipe. That's like your story. And then at the end of each chapter, you have like your recipe card. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. So I started toying around with it. And so like I got a copy of the book. I don't know how good it will come out, but like, so it's got the story. And then at the end, there is, of each chapter, page like this. It's like a recipe card. Tells you what you need to do, the ingredients, the prep time. And then I got a little picture of something we did. That's one of my teachers playing football in the hallway with some boys. And then it kind of breaks down the activity I just mentioned in the story portion. Then you'll see there was a QR code on there. And that's because no one's just going to walk around carrying my book with them at all times. So you can scan that QR code and it'll take you to a web page that has a digital version of it. So you can save it on your phone. Then you've got it at all times. So I figured this is an easy way to reference back. Oh, Earnshaw talked about, this popsicles for breakfast thing. Well, what was he mentioning? You go back to the recipe card. You don't got to reread my whole chapter. It'd be great if you did. You don't have to. And you could look at the card and be like, oh, yeah. It kind of just breaks it down right there. So that was kind of how we came about it. But like the stories, I'm not into, I don't want to say I'm not into, but like research and, citing different, articles and things here. I mean, there's a place for that in education. Yes, we need that. But for me, I said my background. So the way I kind of wrote, and I've been told it's kind of like Tarantino-esque. You watch a Quentin Tarantino movie and it kind of jumps around. Like that's kind of how my stories go. Like I kind of will start here, and then all of a sudden we do a transition to like a flashback of maybe when I was a kid, and then it switches back to education now and kind of how that's all played a role. So it's I've been told from some of the reviews on Amazon and from people who've read it, like it's entertaining. Like you want to know what's going on, but then also like there's these, it's so practical that you can put these things that we have done in place literally tomorrow. And that kind of comes back from my, the punk rock background with Josh and I. Like, I don't want to have to do something that I need to plan out and purchase things and get ready. Like, no, we're going to do this next hour with my staff or the students or whoever. So If that makes sense.
Yeah, no. It makes perfect sense, and I love it. And one thing that really strikes me is I just love the way that you said you make those connections. It's like, look, right here, this is me as an administrator speaking to you of what's working with me, but this was me back in the day, and at that, and you're making those connections. And I think that's so important that you're making it relatable. Like, and that's something
Right.
that I love that we just had that conversation. And in the last couple of podcasts, it seems to be coming up where you're taking things from either where you came from, like myself, industry background coming in, and how those skills can also transition very well into education. And it's really played a big role in what I've done and my success in the classroom, and the successes that I've had now. But for yourself too, also hearing this, I mean, we can draw so much from our background of
Oh
who
yeah.
we truly are and apply it to the now, the here and now, and share that with others. And I really love that concept of the book. And also,
it's kind of like what you're saying with AJ, how he's still a teacher at heart. I think every administrator, no matter how high up the ladder you climb, you should always still have that educator's mindset. So that's kind of what the book is about. When I lead a staff meeting, many times there's no PowerPoint, there's no handouts. Those things can be sent out in emails. Like we were talking before the show, those can be emails you can read on your own, right? So I look at it as, and I've told you this before, in our district, contractually, we have to have an hour-long faculty meeting once a month. Every month we have to. So right there, teachers are forced to come. Many times after teaching all day long, nobody wants to really sit for another hour and listen to a bullet point or a PowerPoint or whatever. So I look at it as, this is my time to engage my staff. This is my time we're going to problem solve. We're going to collaborate. And for me, going back to when I was a teacher and I had my kids up and moving and hands-on, why should a staff meeting be any different than that? Like, we want to get up. We want to move around. We need to be active, especially after teaching all day long. And so these are some of the activities that we've done, like flipping flapjacks. When I took them into the gym and they all had to grab a piece of butcher paper and they got in their own teams. I said, you have to make a team of one person represented from every grade level and department. Stand on it. I said, okay, now your goal is you need to flip this paper over without anybody touching the actual floor. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's the goal. Like, they're like, that's what we're doing for our faculty meeting. I'm like, exactly, that's what we're doing for our faculty meeting. And then the thing was, every group had a different approach. And when we got down, I think there was 5 teams or 6 teams, and the first 3 would get a prize. The last 2 or 3 did not. But when they were down to those last 3, nobody quit. And everyone who was already done started cheering them on and trying to encourage them, like, hey, try it this way. Not telling them do what we did, but looking at their approach and saying, okay, this is what you guys are already focused on. Here's your approach to this. Why don't you try doing it this way? And so then everyone finished. I gave out the prizes. And if you are ever at my campus, the prizes are things like, hey, all right, second place, you get a high five. Third place, you get so I usually give like the best prize to like the last team. So third place, you get jeans pass. First place, you guys get hugs, which, well, that was pre-COVID, not anymore, right? But so the thing was, Fonz, after we did this, everyone's in a good mood. We're laughing. We're enjoying each other's company. How does this relate to the classroom? Because every kid's got a different way to learn. Not every kid learns the exact same way. Not every kid's going to approach things the same way. So we talked about opening our eyes to knowing these different approaches and learning styles for our kids. And, I guess I kind of approach our staff meetings as like professional. They're not staff meetings. They're more professional development for us. And that's just one example. And that's one of my favorite ones because it was the last thing we were able to do before we left for COVID in March 2020. But yeah, just things like that Well, how is that not an effective staff meeting? You can't argue that it's not, you know? So that's kind of like my approach to what we do.
But I love it. I mean, it's team building, and the
Hmm.
thing that you hit on too, you're seeing everybody through a different lens, how they work, how they process. And for me, that's always been huge for my students when being in the classroom is the thought process. It's like there's many ways to solve a problem, but I'm always curious, like, how did they approach it?
Right.
And how could that be effective? How did they approach it? And how is that effective? And what if you combine these two? How much more effective would that be? And you're building that sense of community. You're having fun. The teachers are kind of just getting a brain break,
Right.
also as well. But I mean, there's so much that's going on in that activity. Now, I know the title of the book is the EduCulture Cookbook, and I know you mentioned in the previous podcast when you came up, when you were on, that you were actually working as a cook
Oh yeah.
prior many years ago. So tell us about that experience a little bit, if you don't mind, and maybe like because I can see the way the way you described your book, writing this, but drawing from your previous experiences. You said you worked as a cook, so that's the immediate connection I made after we did our first podcast together, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe there's a tie in there.
Well, there is. If I didn't go into education, I would have went to culinary school. Like I loved. So again, this ties back to someone seeing something in me. So I was a busboy at a Knights of Columbus, and we had a waitress there who also worked at this local bar and grill in town. And she's like, "Hey, we're looking for a dishwasher." So a couple of us were like, "Well, let's split it. We all don't want to work full time, well, not full time, but in high school, whatever, couple days a week as a dishwasher." So we split it up. And then that turned into another thing. We all kind of left the Knights Columbus because we realized there was better money at the bar and grill, the local bar. And so we all picked up some more hours, and I was a dishwasher for a while. And people there, the boss, the head cook, like, "Hey, we're gonna move you up to like soup and salad." That was basically the prep guy. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, you sure? I kind of like just washing dishes. I'm just doing my own thing, and that's it." And like, no. It's time you move up. And long story, but I'm going to make it short. Eventually I become the top line cook. And just trained through there. But it was these people who saw this in me. And again, not to toot my own horn, but I remember the waitresses would say when I was in charge of the kitchen, we had the least amount of food ever sent back, the most compliments people would get. And, and again, I was in a leadership role in that spot with my assistant cook below me, the prep guy, the dishwasher, like making sure this needs to go smooth because it's the girls out there bringing the food who are going to take the brunt of anything they're upset with. So yeah, just kind of and it's funny because my wife always says now, she's like, "You never cook at home." With that background, I'm like, I know I really should. Like, I'll get out there and grill, but like, I should do more at home. But she's very good at it as well. So I'm like, well, I like your cooking, babe. But yeah, it's so there's that whole tie in there too, and just one, we've talked about this. I think we've talked about this before. Like, everyone loves music, right? Music just puts people in a great mood. Everyone loves food. Like, who doesn't? So it was just kind of like a silly connection I made. Like, what's going to stick out from the plethora of all these education books coming out? And I just wanted something that people can refer back to quickly. And I'm like, well, recipe cards. So yeah, but
Mike, the way you describe this, and just, I can definitely see what people see as far as you saying
you.
that they have those leadership skills, because just the way that you even present yourself, the way that you speak so passionately, not just about education, but even just right now describing the way you moved up and going into that, like, you can see that leadership skill there. But right now, as you were describing that, I'm thinking, you were already prepping to be a principal before you even knew that, because you said, you are the headline cook and you've got people that you oversee, and the ladies out in the front, those are your teachers that are taking the brunt of it. and anything that comes back to them is going to come back to you. And I mean, look at that connection. I mean, that just really kind of stood out to me right now as you were describing that. Now,
Stood out to me now too. I never thought about it till you said it.
yeah, that's you now too. You're
Right.
still that chef. You're
Right.
you're the chef, the executive chef there, and everybody else is, you're overseeing them and making sure that everything is palatable, not only for
Yeah.
your administrators, but that work with you, but your teachers as well, that you're always giving them the freshest of the fresh, and a la carte even. So that's a great tie-in right there.
Yeah.
Don't you just love it when those things pop up all of
Yeah.
a sudden? Now I'm gonna dive in a little deeper, because I know we haven't gotten into this conversation, but I'm, out of my curiosity and of course just always wanting to learn. You wrote this book. You're talking about school culture, classroom culture. I want to ask, what right when you first started this role, were there issues? Like, I mean, you're stepping into a new role, things that you already knew that you said, I need to change this, or I need to change that, and this is what I need to work on. How did you process all that when you first got that chair?
I'm not going to lie, and this would be a whole nother episode I'll have to come back for.
Yeah,
But
I don't mind it. We can do a part two.
when I became a principal, so even when I was an assistant principal, I kind of did my thing, and I knew I'm going to be building relationships and hands-on. But when I became a principal now, and this was 8 years ago, for some reason, the first time in my life, I felt I need to be the stereotypical principal. I need to sit here and answer phone calls and emails, and then, okay, it's 10:30. Let me go do a round around the building and wave to people so they see me. Then I go back and bury myself in my office in paperwork. I did that for about 3 years, and I became miserable. Like, I dreaded going into work each day. And this was the first time in my life I ever called it work. I always referred to it as I'm going to school. And so I started calling it work. I did not want to go. And so that was the summer that I went to NAESP. I believe it was 2017 or 2018. And that was the summer I mentioned earlier. I got connected on Twitter, and I started seeing all these amazing educators. Like, that was when I saw Hamish Brewer before he was Hamish Brewer. Like, he had a packed room because he had gained some momentum, but there was no book out, anything. And I'm like, this guy's doing what I want to do. I met, Andy Jacks and Adam Welcome, and just these amazing educators, these amazing leaders. And I'm like, man, okay. And I was like, I'm going to come into this year. I'm going back to Mike. Like, I'm not going to be, Mike with my tie all tight every day. And like, no, like, and that was the year I brought the skateboard in and my mobile desk. And I'm like, I don't need to be in the front office all day. Like, those emails, I can answer them in the classroom on my laptop or on my phone even. And so, yeah, that was a whole like transition piece that it took me a while to learn. We all need to just be ourselves, be true to who we are. Like, I'm not saying like it's just, we're partying willy-nilly all the time. Like, there's a whole process to everything I do. And this past summer, I was able to share that with my local administrative team, where some of these activities, because we were talking about how we want to focus our staff meetings for the school year. And I was able to share, my superintendent gave myself, my assistant principal, a huge compliment, saying, he's like, you two truly lead professional development. You're not doing a staff meeting. You're taking advantage, and you're giving them something that they can take back to their students. And that just, so the book too, I don't want people to think, oh, well, I'm not an administrator, I can't buy this. No, everything in here is everything I do. I want the teachers to be able to bring back to their kids. So this is for every educator, paraprofessional, teacher, whoever. But so I started explaining some of these activities we do on our campus. And I think it opened up the eyes to some of my other administrators. Like, okay, you need to tell me about that now, because I thought you guys were just playing a game. Well, no, we were playing this game, but we are also analyzing our local MAP assessment data. Like, I would rather play a game with it and discuss it than just give me the data in front of me on a chart and, okay, let's look and analyze it. Come on. So, it's nice to see, like, we should be having fun in education. We should all want to be there. We should all want to be at a staff meeting after school. So I think I kind of answered your question. I kind of went on my own tangent. So I apologize.
No, it's all good because I mean, like you said, you're just being honest. You're speaking about your experience, and that's what the show's all about. Just amplifying, telling your story, and it really helps me too in seeing things in a different way and understanding what it's like to be on that chair, and making those decisions and being at the top, and how important it is to really listen to your staff and check that climate within your school and so on. So, tell us a little bit about that. I know we kind of hit that on the previous episode, when we had Josh out here also and everything. But if you can just expand a little bit more, coming back face to face, what was the climate like? How did you kind of make those adjustments to? I don't want to say bring back things to a norm or normal, because there
Right.
is no
Right.
normal, but just to kind of put things back together, I guess.
Yeah. So I realized last year I am not an effective virtual administrator, and I've admitted that to my staff. I hated working from home. I hated not being face to face with people. Like, that's not my strong suit. So there was things I needed to learn. But this year, we all came back. All of our staff's back. All of our students are back. And the problem was, I think we all knew that this year was not going to be like what we were used to pre-COVID. But I think we all hoped it would be. I think we all had that hope, like, okay, well, we're all back. We just have to stay 3 feet apart and have a mask on. Okay, perfect. We can do this. But then once our kids entered our building, and after a few days, and we started seeing from, the government and local agencies and just all of these, I don't want to say hoops we have to jump through, but there's all of these new protocols and things in place. It was very overwhelming. It still is. And, Todd Whitaker has always said, when the school principal sneezes, the entire school catches a cold. And for me, this beginning of the school year, I have been in I think I've been in more meetings this year already than like the last year and a half before, like constantly being pulled to meetings, which I know we need some of them to discuss what we're going to do in the daily shift in requirements. But that has an effect on our staff, because then I'm not there to help them. My amazing assistant principal, she's getting pulled to deal with parents or a contact tracing, which we now have to do, which takes, 75% of your day up. And so I was starting to go back into that spot I was those first 3 years. And I'm like, starting to think, like, I don't know if I can continue doing this, if this is how education is going to be. And, I got to give a shout out to Jeff Kubiak, one of my best friends. Jeff wrote the foreword for my book, and he's like, dude, read your own book. He's like, you are the edu chef, read your book. And so I kind of skimmed through it a little bit, and I was going through some of the chapters, and I just kind of realized, I'm like, I'm not being me again. And that's the problem. So yes, I know there's meetings to do and whatnot, but when I'm on my campus, like, I got to get the music back out there. I'm in the park. I got to get back out in the parking lot. I can't make these excuses like, oh, let me handle this. And okay, they've got the parking lot handle. I'll work on this morning. No, like, that's what makes me happy. Being out there, greeting families and students with I got my rock blocker plus blaring Kids Bop, and, they're coming in, everyone's saying hi. And then you get in the building, like, I'm back in the classrooms. I got my skateboard with me again. I got the mobile desk. And it's just, I could tell this past week, the vibe, not that he even addressed anything, but just the vibe is like going back up. And I think, too, we're at the point where I think teachers have, not just teachers, all of us have realized, okay, this is kind of how this year is. We can control what's in our classroom. We can control what's in our building. Let's not not saying just to completely ignore what's outside, but when these kids are here, let's focus on that. And I got to give a shout out to my staff, because our staff, you would not think that they were stressed out or overwhelmed or exhausted at all, because when they're with their kids in front of them, it is on, and they are just killing it. I mean, they're back to doing, kids are up and we're moving and we're staying up part, but like they have found ways to adapt to still where it's not just you're sitting there in straight rows listening to me now. It's a pandemic, but we can still be safe and still make learning fun and make people want to be there. So again, I think I went on my other tangent, but when you ask me these questions and I get all passionate about what we're talking about,
Hey man, you and I are very similar in this. Like I can go on, and I think oftentimes that's why I don't get invited to a lot of podcasts, because when I do get to share my story, I can talk on and on and
right.
on. But I love this because I never thought, and I'm not saying this, and I'm not putting this out there publicly or anything like that, but in my mind, I was like, they always told me, it's like, hey man, like, don't you ever want to be a principal? I was like, no, I never do, never. But the more I kind of start, listening to you and listening to other administrators like Josh Tovar and the guys that do Unlock the Middle, I was like, man, I can relate to them. Like I'm like them. And, I'm not saying like, I would be awesome, but I'm just saying I have those very same ideas too, and all of these things. And then I'm like, well, okay, just slow down. Let me just finish what my school first. And who knows, maybe that'll be the next thing I sign up for. I don't know, but it's just things that I love. Now, since we're kind of rounding out the show, we've got about 10 minutes left. So we're going to start off with, I don't know, I want a little bit more lighthearted questions, just to have some fun and just to kind of lighten the mood as we get ready to start wrapping up. And I know the last time I asked you what your EduKryptonite was, and you said data. So, but I wanted to ask, is there a second thing that just makes you just like, like, oh my goodness, like this is definitely another bit of EduKryptonite? What is it? I mean, I'm thinking about Josh right now. I was like, man, we're missing Josh here. I was like, I need to check to see if there's a shoe pick or something.
I'm sure there's a Saturday morning shoe pick.
Yeah, Saturday morning shoe pick. But Mike, so what else is out there that really, just weakens you?
Meetings to just have meetings sometimes. We've all been in one where we're just sitting there, we're like, this could have been a phone call in 5-10 minutes and been done. This could have been an email. And for me, it's just, I think the more I'm away from the kids, that's what kind of really gets to me. So I hate, like I said, there's meetings that I love and that we need to do, like when I get together with my fellow principals and we're just like knowing we're all on the same page and what can we do to move forward? How can we support each other? How can we support our staff and students? But then there's sometimes, and I love when our entire district administration comes together. But let's face it, there's some times when we're all sitting in a meeting, even if it's with the groups we love, and it's kind of like, oh man, we're still talking about this topic? Like, let's go. We got things to do. We get kids waiting on us. So I have to say meetings are my number 2.
Nice. All right. So we've got data being number 1, meetings number 2. Awesome. Now, let me ask you something. Are you a planner or are you just completely spontaneous?
Believe it or not, Josh and I talked about this on an episode before. I think it was season 2. Maybe even season 1. It was a long time ago, but I am a planner, but I don't have it where it's, here's my lesson plan book, bullet point down, step A, B, C, D, E. Like my plans are more like, okay, where's my Post-it? I'm going to jot things down, put it here. I'm going to type it like couple things into my Evernote. For me, I've always been this way too. Even when I was in college, when my writing courses, I would sit there and plan things in my head, if that makes sense. Like before I had to write my essay or a report, I never jotted things down. And everyone's like, you're procrastinating. It's due in 2 days. You haven't started. I'm like, no, I've got it up here. And then when I would sit down, and once I start writing, it just would flow, it flows out because it was up here. So I think a lot of my approach, to what I do as a building leader is similar to that. For some of these activities, like that I mentioned in the book, like there were things, I kind of jotted down on index cards or Post-its, so I knew here's what I need to touch on. But
Awesome.
yeah,
It's
it's
like
not.
it's like kind of like a hybrid. And I'm very much the same way. Like, uh, and you mentioned procrastination. I was like, my motto has always been procrastinate later. I'm
Yeah.
one of those. I'm one of those, but I don't know what it is. I just like to. I feel like I work better under pressure, and like
Yes.
I get a heightened sense of alertness, and I'm just boom ready to go. Like when I
Laser
need to.
focus when you need to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way that I've always been. But I like what you said. I can relate to that when I'm about to do a project or write a blog or anything. Like I'm planning it out in my head, and then immediately once I get to typing, it's just like woof, it just all
Well,
flows out.
and I think it makes it more organic. Like when Josh and I
Yes.
record our podcast, season one, and this is before we talked about that. Him and I have never met face to face. Before we really knew each other, we had like a script that we would both have up on our computer, and we would try. Like Josh was in red, I was in blue. Like we would try to do it, but eventually we said, "Look, man, let's." We did an episode. We're like, let's just talk about this is our topic, and that's what we felt we started to get our flow going because it's when something is too scripted out or too planned out, it doesn't feel real or authentic, you know?
Yes.
And then people don't buy into it, they don't see through it, and it's just kind of like, okay, let's go through the motions and get this done. So,
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I have friends that have approached me and they're like, "Hey man, so like you just do your show and like now actually it wasn't until maybe about 30 shows ago that I was like, okay, now let me put some questions on here to lead the conversation because before that I was just getting the hang of it and just but
right,
still even then like I didn't even ask you anything I wanted to ask because everything was just organic and just flowing based on the conversation and it's honest and authentic. And then they asked me, it's like, so you just download your stuff and put it up? I was like, yeah, dude, I don't process anything because I don't know. I just want it to be authentic. If there's a
right.
little, noise here or a little click there, this, dude, it's
So what?
life. It's
Right,
life. So what? It's about content. No one's keeping score. No one's
right,
saying like, oh, it's like, hey, it's about the content and the
right.
conversation. So anyway, but let me ask you also, what do you do to get out of your own head?
Ooh, that's a good one. And I've been in my own head a lot this year. Honestly, it's cliche, the whole self-care, but like, running, exercising, like when I do that by myself, like people ask me, because I've run marathons before, and they're like, "Well, what do you think about when you're doing a 3-hour, 20-mile run training?" I'm like, what do you listen to? I'm like, honestly, I put my headphones on, but after the first mile, everything's kind of blocked out, and I go, I don't know, I get in like this zone, and it just kind of clears everything. And I think about a lot of things. I think about life and my family and work and, a blog, maybe. I mean, just all kinds of things. And I always feel like when I'm done with that, it kind of, you know, I have like this cleaning sense. So that's what I've gotten back to these last few weeks, really getting back into being, okay, I'm getting up early tomorrow, or I'm going to go do this. And then another thing, and I can't stress this enough to any educator out there, especially administrators, though, I've taken my work email off my phone when it's after hours. So I got to remember to turn that notification button so I don't get notifications. If someone needs something that's crucial, they're not going to email you. They're going to call you or text you. And then when the weekends come, like there's this mentality that like administrators are supposed to be working 24/7. Like, no, I have a life too. And I've made it clear with my staff, like, because before they say, hey, did you see my email? This will be like a Monday morning. I'm like, well, why didn't you send it? Like, oh, Saturday night. I go, I haven't looked at any emails since Friday, 3:00, when I left. Take time for yourself and your family, and we all need to sometimes just shut it down and like enjoy our lives and our people who are with us.
Nice and well said. I definitely agree with you. It's important. Like you said, it's not that you're not doing your job, but it's like you said, we all have personal lives. We need to take our health and
Right.
into account for sure. And really just setting those boundaries too.
Right.
Sometimes
Exactly.
you get those emails Saturday night. It's like, well, there's nothing really that I can do for you right now. It's Saturday night. We
Right.
can wait till Monday morning, you get those emails. So it's just things like you said. I think setting boundaries is important. Exhaustion does not equal productivity. And many
No.
people wear exhaustion as a badge of honor. Like, oh, I was up till 10:45 doing
Right.
this, and kind of, man, well, that's sad that you were that
Right.
busy, because the one thing that I've learned is whatever it is that you're saying yes to, there's something else that you're saying no to. And if you're
Exactly.
preoccupied with your work, you're saying no to your health, you're saying no to your family, you're saying no to your friends, and
Right.
to the things that are most important to you. So you really have to find that balance. Uh, Last thing that I'd like to ask, well, maybe this one and one more. What
Okay.
is the most important piece of advice that you carry with you at all times?
Just stay true to who you are. You know, be yourself. Stay true to who you are, and don't hide that. That's definitely it. Number one.
Nice. That's so important. It really is.
Yeah.
Sometimes we try to emulate people. I know in the
Right.
beginning, it's like, oh man, I want to be just like them, and I want to do things like them. But it's like, I can't be them. That they're them. Just be
Well,
authentic, be genuine. Take what they have, sprinkle it onto your practice, and it's like just. I always say that little sprinkle it onto what you do. I was on a podcast and they said, "Oh man, you should be like the EdTech Bay." Because I was like, sprinkle
there you go.
on that extra tech. Hey, I'm EdTech Bay and you're Edu Chef. So there you go, man. How about that?
Another shameless plug for the book. I say in my intro, like all great recipes, you don't have to follow what I've done to a T, because what I've done may not work for you and your staff or your students. I talked about that once, I think, on one of my punk rock reflection episodes. It's okay to look up and emulate somebody else, but you need to make it your own. You said it, you're not them. So take what some of the characteristics and qualities, but how can you make it your own?
Yeah, definitely very important. And last but not least, my favorite question, and again, putting you on the spot, me being very spontaneous here. Again, if you and I were to switch roles right now at this very second, and you're interviewing me, what would be a question you'd like to ask me?
I would want to know what Disney character best represents you and why.
Ooh, that is, oh man, what Disney character represents me the best? Oh my goodness, man. You got me.
It's a tough one.
That is a tough one. That is a tough one. Oh man, you really put me on the spot here on this one. I don't know, honestly, which one. You really got me here.
So when I was asked this question, I said, well, first I couldn't. I'm trying to think. There's a million Disney characters, so I said Goofy. And the interview, this was in an interview. I was asked this, and they said, "Why?" I go, "Well, because he always has kind of a lot of fun. He's always in a good mood, but yet look at how reliable he is. He's always there with the group, and like they need him to be a part of it." And I'm like, and they're like, "Oh, that's a really good answer." I'm like, really? I just kind of threw that out there, but it's kind of true. Like there's so many answers.
But that's what I was gonna say. That was my first choice, Goofy. But I was like, that's gonna sound kind of goofy if I say Goofy,
right,
because But yeah, I mean, and I completely agree with you on that. That's really cool. And the funny thing is too that we coincided with that answer, because that was my first choice, and then I was really thinking, I was like, then I got into the hyper overanalyzing and being like, okay, maybe I'm just overanalyzing this. But yeah, intuitively, it would have been definitely Goofy. Oh man, well, Mike, we can definitely go on and on and on and do this, and maybe we'll do another part 2 later on, and maybe just kind of do a mid-year check, or things of that sort and everything. That would be great. Just
I love it
to see, because I'm always wanting to learn and curious. As I'm thinking more about administrators and professional development and things of that sort. Always just looking for people that are practitioners that are doing amazing things within professional development on their staff, changing school culture, making just a wonderful imprint in their lives and the lives of the students and of the learning community. So we'll definitely do a follow-up, but I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate your work, what you're doing. And please, before we, end the show, let our audience and, our listeners, watchers, let them know how you can be reached.
Yeah, so number one, Twitter. It's at Mike R. Earnshaw. Same for Instagram. I'm not too active on Instagram. I haven't figured out how that really works too good. There it is. But you also got to follow our podcast. It's at Punk Classrooms. Same thing for Instagram and Twitter. We got the website, punkrockclassrooms.com. Shout out to my co-host. If you want to see some pictures of shoes, it's at Josh R. Buckley. Oh, and we were just talking about life and editings, and here comes my dog and my son. So we might get some barks.
Hey, give him a shout out. Hey, you can come on if he wants to give a shout out or something.
Evan, you want to come give a shout out, bud? What? You want to come say hi to everybody? This is my son, Evan, 7th grade.
Hey, hi, man, guys. How's it going? How you doing?
We're about to head out to my nephew's football game this morning. So, and then last thing, head over to Amazon, Barnes and Noble's, EduMatch's website. Pick this up. I love when people, when they pick one up, they shoot out a picture on social media and tag me. And then if you could leave a review on, there it is, leave a review on Amazon for me. That would be the best compliment you can give me. So check it out. I hope you enjoy it. And there's our website.
Punk Rock, punkrockclassrooms.com. Go check them out. These guys are amazing. And, I still can't get over the fact that you guys have never met in real life, but you guys just have just this amazing chemistry. And it goes back to, of course, not only as your roles as administrators and just the edu leaders that you are, but of course, just the music being the root of the friendship too.
That's what brought us together.
And bringing y'all together. So thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you. And we'll definitely look forward to seeing the amazing work that you're doing. Keep it up, man. We definitely need more administrators and people that inspire others, such as myself, like you and Josh and everybody that's out there. And for you watching and listening, thank you so much, as always, for making my EdTech life what it is today. I mean, we do this because we have a passion for education, and we want to amplify educator, education leader, anybody, creator stories. If you're interested in being a guest, please make sure you head out to our website. Go to myedtech.life. Contact us, let us know, and we'd definitely love to have you on the show to amplify your story as well. And as always, guys, please make sure you check out our merch. Right now, we have a sale, 38% off everything. Oh,
nice.
You can get a shirt for $13, guys. I mean, get your conference wear, guys. Hey, showing up to your conference with your My EdTech Life shirt, just show us some love. We really appreciate that. Y'all take care. And as always, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.